Now that we understand how to essentially change the way the viewports display and navigate it through the viewport, the next thing I'm going to talk about is in the top right, all these cool buttons that you see here. This is very straightforward. If you hover it, Unreal is going to tell you exactly what it is. So if you press Q, remember, if I right click in Q, I go up. But if I don't right click, I just press Q, I can see that I can select assets. So Q is my select action. If I go over here and I press W, well, with an item selected, now I can manipulate with a gizmo. This is a translation control inside Unreal. I'm just manipulating this icon for now, but we're going to be using this a lot when we're world building inside Unreal. Notice that the translation can either be per axis, per two axis, or if you press in the center, all the axes together. If you go to the next option and you hover it, you see that it's telling you that E is the rotation. The problem with icons is that it's not going to be able to see the rotation because they're always facing the proper direction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the top left here. A little bit of a, not Easter egg, like a tease for the next section. But I'm going to add a shape to my scene. Okay, I'm going to add the cube so we can see some of those manipulations happening in real time. So I'm pressing W to move up and down. I'm pressing E now to rotate. Rotation is interesting. Rotation and position are pretty cool. Notice that my cube is on an angle, but my gizmo stays sharp, facing the world normal. That is because right beside it, you see this tiny planet? If you click on it, now I'm cycling between world position and local position. Local and world position affect also translation. So translations and rotations are affected by world position. I'm going to shift it back to world. And if I go to the last icon, which is the R in my keyboard, I can now scale, which is also cool because it's also affected. I can scale on individual axes, but notice there is no world scaling. The scale always happens locally. So that's an important distinction. And if you can either hold two axes together, or you can hold all of them together, or just a single axis. Okay? All right, but you're noticing that there is a weird snapping happening with scaling here. And you might be asking, is my computer not properly running Unreal? When I move, there's also a weird snapping that is happening. Same for rotation, snapping 10-degree angles. There's nothing wrong with your Unreal. This is essentially how it's supposed to be, because Unreal by nature wants you to be tied to a grid, tied to a modular workflow. But you can change the increments of this snapping. And you can also disable altogether. And I wouldn't recommend if you don't know what you're doing. So let's say I want to move this, but I don't want to be moving in these jumps. Notice that we have a grid here that has a 10. 10 is essentially 10 centimeters. Unreal units, centimeters. So every time you see a number here, that's in centimeters. As a matter of fact, if you look down, you can actually see the grid here. If you count, it's 10 by 10, which means 1 meter by 1 meter. The default size of the object in this grid is 1 meter by 1 meter. So let's say I want to move this a larger distance without really struggling by pushing around. I can just go here and say 1,000. So now my grid is changing. If I zoom out, that's how big 1,000 by 1,000 look like. Which means if I press, click, and drag, notice that my mouse is taking some time to travel that distance, right? I actually just told you that it was that big, but it was not. But you can see that right now is just snapping into that direction. I can just increase this and keep increasing. So now if I do this, it's going to travel 10,000 all the way there, right? So I'm just going to bring that back and put that number to 10, which is the default. By the way, what I did right there, I press F in the keyboard, and that's the hotkey to focus into something. All right, so let's say I want to move very tiny increments in 1 centimeters. I just put one, and then I can just move around. Thiago, that's not enough for me. I'm a rebel. I want to move this even uh, smaller increments. Well, you can just go here and you press that button, and now you're breaking free. You're moving with complete freedom. I'm going to enable back again because I'm not that free. I really don't like breaking this grid, to be quite honest with you. But check this out. If I press E for my rotation, remember that's the hotkey here, is incrementing in 10 degrees. I can just go here to the angle and say, you know what, I want to go 90 degrees. Boom, boom, boom. Or I wanted to go here and go to 15 degrees. Or I just want to break free. Clicking it, and I can just do whatever I want. I'm actually going to enable the local axis here so I can do some manipulations. So as you can see, that tool is essentially there to help you manipulate geometry in the viewport. You can do whatever you want. I am scared, so I'm going to just enable back. I don't like this has a bunch of decimal casing rotation values, so I'm just going to reset this too. By the way, that's the details tab. We're going to talk about this next. And as you can see, there was a tiny arrow there that essentially when you click it, it goes back to the position that is the default and the default settings of scaling and rotation translation. We'll tackle that in a second. Let's talk about scaling. In the top here, if I click on that button, you see there's a bunch of weird snap for scaling, right? So I'm going to go here and press R, and I'm going to start scaling, and look at the details tab here. I'm scaling by 3.5. It seems like this is going in increments of 0.25. What happens if I go to 10? Well, I'm even going to zoom out a little bit. Now, I'm moving my mouse. You can't see it, but I'm scrolling. I'm really pushing my mouse. I'm holding the left click and dragging. And you can see the scale is just jumping in increments of 10. If I go down here and I pick this odd number, essentially multiplying the scalar by that, you can see that that's a little bit more smooth because the increments of scaling are very tiny. It might come a time that you're just like, that's just not enough and you want to break free. You can do the same thing, just deselect and just go crazy. Unreal gives you many options to achieve the same result. I do not enjoy manipulating geometry like this, so I'm just going to go to my details tab here and just press the arrow key that I spoke about. Boom. The scale is now default. All right. There is only one icon here in between and one here that we didn't speak about. I'm going to show to you both of them right now. The camera icon is straightforward. This is your camera speed. Right now the speed is 1. I can just increase that to 16. And look at this. When I travel, I'm flying like Superman. Okay? How often you're going to be doing this? Quite often. But it's easy to lose control. As a matter of fact, if you go here, you notice you have a camera speed scaler. If you put like 1,000, so now you're moving at 16,000 speed. So I'm just going to look up and press once. And all of a sudden, I'm in space, man. Look at that. The sun is right there. I've lost completely where I was. If I go down, I can't even find it anymore where I was supposed to be. And that happens quite often when you're starting your journey in Unreal Engine. So what exactly we do in a situation like this? Well, I can just go here and say 1, so it's 16 again, but I'm so far away, it's going to take an hour to find where I was supposed to be. Look at that. Your scene contains a sky dome mesh with a sky material, but it does not cover this part of the screen. I'm above the matrix right now. So what happens when this situation arises? Well, I can go to my outliner. Here's another place that we haven't touched yet. And I can just find something. For example, the skylight icon, and I can just press F. My cameras go instantly focus that. That's one way. But check this out. If I hold Control and I press 1 on my keyboard, and I move here, for example, and I press Control 2, and I move here, for example, press Control 3, and now that I have those buttons selected, I can just cycle between hotkey positions. So 1, 2, 3. So that's another way for you not to get lost here. You find a framing that you like, Control 1, all the way to Control 0 underneath your F keys in your keyboard. And as a reminder, the camera is how you change the speed of the camera that you have right here. Even this is too fast, you can just go here and put like the bar all the way down. So now the camera is super, super slow. Let's say you want to change speed on the fly. You're holding the right click, you're moving, you can just rotate your mouse wheel, and then it's just gonna push to the correct direction. And it's gonna change your speed of the flight, right? It's an easy way to manipulate and get anywhere you want. Okay, that's cool. So there's only one icon left. If you click on it, that's your surface snapping icon. This is very cool. So let's say I want to put a cylinder on the side of this cube here. So I go here to my top left, my content menu. I just go cylinder, and then I start moving the cylinder around, and I need to rotate it, scaling, position, facing to face. That's just too much work. If I go to this snapping and I say surface snapping and enable it, every time I create something like this, for example, the pivot is going to be snapping into that location. Notice that it's not the object, it's the pivot. In the case of the cylinder, the pivot is in the center, so the pivot is snapping to where it's supposed to be. If the pivot was in the base of the cylinder, then the whole cylinder was going to be snapping into that position. Now you are Unreal Master. You know how to navigate the viewport, you know how to change the viewport display. You basically know everything about Unreal. No, I'm joking, but that's very important because this is where you're going to be spending most of your time in Unreal, inside the viewport, inside your world. So that's the viewport. To my right, you see that I was talking about the outliner. The outliner is interesting because it's essentially the Windows Explorer, if you come from Windows. It's where everything in your world, in your computer, is going to be showcased. So everything that exists in this level that I am in is going to show up right here. So I can just go here and cycle between stuff. Like my cube is here, my cylinder is here, my landscape settings are here, my player start. If I press F, that's where when I press play, the character is going to show up. Everything is here. If it exists in this level, it's going to show up here. What is cool about this is that each one of these assets has their own details tab too. The details change. You're going to see some stuff is going to be the same in several of these. Like for example, the transform. Because this exists in the 3D world, it's going to have a location, rotation, scale settings. But everything else, it changes depending on what exactly you're clicking on. So if I go to my directional light, I still have my transform, but right after I have my light setting. So I can just go here and make the sky red, for example. Okay? This is essentially where you access the information that you're going to be manipulating. So every single one of this is going to be changing the details tab. And like I said, the details is essentially, well, the details of the asset that you're selecting. A little bit hidden in Unreal Engine 5 is your content drawer. So if you go all the way to the bottom left here, see this icon? If you press it, you essentially access all the content that you have in your project. Unfortunately for us, in this project, there is nothing yet. We haven't created anything, so there's not going to show up anything in this location right now. But I'm going to do a magic trick. I'm going to pause the recording really quick, and I'm going to open the other projects and show to you exactly how that looks like. Ta-da! If I go down now and I press content drawer, you can see that I have a lot of cool stuff here. All my projects is inside the content folder, 2.5D game, and all these interesting folders have stuff that makes this game works. So I have my AI, my art assets, my blueprints, my characters, effects, etc. So if you come from another game engine, this is going to sound trivial, but if you're coming from anywhere else, this is very important what I'm going to tell you right now, so please pay attention. This is not like Photoshop, okay? The projects are not Photoshop. Without version control, there's no like, I'm going to save a new version of the Photoshop file, like Photoshop.final.version1. Then the next one is Photoshop final dot. This time is really final dot version 10. You cannot do that. You cannot hard copy version control in Unreal. Everything that you do, if you don't have Perforce or Git or any other service for versioning control, is as is. Which means it's very important that we maintain this clean, right? If your desktop is messy and you're the type of person that just installs softwares without putting them in the proper folders, you're going to struggle with this. And this is very important that you pay attention, because very easily and very quickly, if the folder is not properly named, there's no naming convention in your projects, you might get into trouble, because when you're naming stuff or moving stuff from one folder to the other, stuff breaks. So this is a very important place. The content drawer is also the second most used part of this interface right now, because it's either the viewport or the content drawer where you're dragging stuff to the viewport. For example, if I go to my characters here and I have my old man, I can just drag my old man to the scene there. Boom. He's walking now. He's walking here, right? So it's very important that you maintain that very organized. What happened here is I drag something to the viewport and my content drawer closed. This is a new thing that came from Unreal Engine 5. I do not like it. I like to have this always open. So what I do, and thank you Epic for this, they have a button called Docking the Layout. That way, look at that, that interface is always open. So I can just go like crazy and start adding a bunch of old mans to my scene. Okay? So I prefer to work like this. Some people prefer to hold that. Look at this. Oh my God, this is the first time I'm showing you this, but you can get your tabs and your windows and just dock into different places. So often you see me working, if you watch my live stream or if you seen a previous video of mine, you're gonna notice that often I like to do this, strictly because when I have a lot of assets, say I have a list of textures like this, I just really wanted to have everything in a way that's easier to read. And I don't like when it's debugger like this. I think it's a little bit complicated, but to each their own. All this to say that the content drawer is a very important part of the interface, and you're going to be using that a lot. So naming convention or organization is very important. Luckily for you, there is a Git UE5 style guide. I use this religiously. In every company I ever worked on, we try to stick to this as much as we can. And I have noticed when I went to work in other projects for other people, that they also use this, including people at Epic. So I really recommend you go to this document. It's essentially, like it suggests the name, a style guide. What kind of prefixes, suffixes, how to name the assets, and more importantly, if you scroll down a little bit, you have your folder structure. It's important to know that this is not really a rule. This is a suggestion to you, but I really recommend at least sticking to the prefixes or suffixes. It will make your life so much easier. As the folder structure, I mean, each project is their own thing, but you'll be surprised with the amount of projects that I worked on with different types of clients for broadcast, VFX, games, you name it. A lot of them follow this. It's just good. Like if you jump from one project to the other with different teams, you just know where everything is. So for you, it's going to be also good, even if you're a solo developer, just to have the habit of organizing things in a way that, like from project to project, maintain some kind of cohesiveness, right? So I'm going to include this into the resources of this course. It's a very interesting read. It's one of those things that I recommend to every student of mine to just go through this at least once. It's long, but it has a lot of good insights, and it really helps you organizing your project. It's easier to organize from the beginning than try to fix and move stuff when the project's already halfway through. Trust me, it literally causes so many issues. So it's good to start early, and if you can, just follow some kind of consistency in naming convention for the structure, that's going to help you in the long run. Well, the only thing left for us to talk about is in the top here. The interface in Unreal is very clever. So everything that is to do with what you're working on, the level, is a tab here. And you can actually add all the stuff to all the tabs to be there. The layout has this light gray design, which essentially means this is related to the level, what you're doing, and this is related to Unreal as a whole. So if I want to just, like, for example, if I want to save my level, there's a save button here. Unreal is going to ask you where you want to save. I'm just going to use the naming convention, folks. L, my first level. Press enter. And now that's saved. If I go to my content drawer here, I can see that that's in content. I saved in the wrong folder. I should be putting the correct folder, but it's just an example. What I'm trying to say to you is everything that's like great related to this level. So if I go here and I can say browse assets associated to this level, I can change selection modes. Ooh, we're going to talk about this pretty soon actually, but for now, it's just a teaser. I can just go to this button here, which is the quick add to the project, and I can legally add a lot of actors. By the way, everything in Unreal that exists is an actor. Everything that you put inside your scene is an actor. They're not acting, but they're actors. And if you go here and I say I want a light, for example, point light, boom, put in a scene, now you have an actor light. You can manipulate and play with it. Surprisingly, it came upside down. Not sure why. Never seen that before. I guess we just saw a bug live. Maybe it was snapping. That was wow. Yeah, that was definitely the snapping. But yeah, so this is where you essentially add stuff. This is your blueprints control for gameplay in the scene. We're gonna talk about this when we're actually doing our 2.5D game. You have a cinematic control. You have a button to play the scene. Right now there's no character, so essentially just looking around. Press escape key to go back. You can just go here and also set up different ways to play and simulate the viewport. Then you have the platforms. We're not going to touch about any of this, to be honest, but that's the information that is there. What's important to notice is that all the way on the right, there is your settings. Unfortunately, the settings is not open fully here because it's cropping in my window. I'm sorry for that. But the third one, the first one is the world settings, which is essentially the settings of the world. The second one is your project settings, and we're going to be talking a lot about this. A lot of interesting things that we need to enable and disable for our project. And then you have your plugins, okay? The plugins window is where we're going to enable a bunch of cool stuff. So plugins are interesting in Unreal. Unreal can do so much, and like you can work with virtual production, TV, games, installations, music, you name it. If you had every single feature of Unreal enabled in every single project, like why would you have a interface for meat control in a 2.5D game? Maybe you have a crazy idea that makes sense, but most people would not need it. So a lot of this very specific niche stuff, very specific functionalities, they are behind plugins. You can create your own plugins, but by default, Epic comes with 632. Okay, 629 built in, and some other stuff that I personally added on top, including our PaperZD. The way it works is that Epic allows you to go through this list and just, maybe I need something for the editor, and you can just go here and take a look in everything that it has available for you. Maybe I want, for example, my paper ZD. Whoops, it needs to be in all plugins. There you go. Paper 2D is the default vanilla version, and the Paper ZD was the plugin that we installed. We actually use both of them. Okay, a lot of functionality we use in Paper ZD is simplified from Paper 2D, which is amazing. We save so much work and time. So I need this, right? We're working with this for this project, so I need to click in it, and then it's going to tell me that I need to restart. So just installing the plugins in the engine are not enough to have that in the project. On the project, per project basis, you need to go and enable the plugins that you might need. So for this right now, I'm going to enable more in the future, but for this, just to illustrate essentially what we did here, I'm just going to enable Paper ZD, and I'm going to press restart. So I'm going to pause the video and come back in a second. And we're back. If I go here right now and I say Paper ZD, you're going to see this installed already. Pretty cool. So a lot of cool stuff that you can have in Unreal, you're going to have to enable here. For example, if you really want volumetrics, like really volumetric fog and dust, we need to enable that. You have something that simulates in the viewport, but it's not truly volumetric sky. It's not truly volumetric clouds until you enable it. So a lot of cool features are behind plugins. It's a good thing because essentially we enable as we need and as we go. We don't need to just have a super heavy engine with all the stuff enabled by default. It's already quite heavy, to be honest. So it's saving a lot of memory by just allowing us to pick and choose what exactly we need. Different plugins will be enabled and they will have different effects. For Paper ZD specifically, if you go to, let me see, if you go to your content drawer, I'm actually think about another plugin that I'm going to show to you later that has his own tools in here. But for Paper ZD, is not the case. If you right click in your content drawer and you just go here, Paper 2D, you see that's the vanilla options. You have your tile map, tile sets, sprites, paper flipbooks. We're going to use this a lot. But if you go to Paper ZD, you have the cool stuff. The animation sequence, animation source, Paper ZD animation BP. We're gonna do so many characters. It's going to be second nature for you after a while. Right? But this is essentially what the gameplay requires. And this is essentially reading the sprites. So yeah, for starters, enable PaperZD, and the next class, let's start building something.